Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Chris Flowers. I'm the executive producer of the Biz Coach Show, and I'm here with Eric T. Whitmore. He is the founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches. What is going on today, boss?
Not too much. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing pretty well, my friend. Just enjoying some sunny Arizona weather, man. It's looking good outside.
It is. It's not quite as warm as it was yesterday, but it's definitely sunny out, which is nice. Mm-hmm.
For all those people that are in Minnesota getting snow right now, sorry about your luck. And had a call earlier today with a lady from Minnesota. She's like, "Oh yeah, it's going to snow here in a little bit." Like, yeah, don't miss that. So I'm good. So
yeah, right.
So we're here to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of business coaching. Is that what we're discussing today, boss?
We are, but I think we need to address one more particular issue. You're a Giants fan, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess it's between you and us to find out. Well, he could end up going to Minnesota, but
no, I don't want Rodgers. Dude, we have no offensive line. He's going to die. You thought it was bad, 4 plays in with the Jets, he got hurt? With our offensive line, he'll be lucky to make it out of spring training for preseason, dude. No, bro. Rodgers is done, man. Rodgers needs to hang it up. Understand.
Actually, I think if he's on a team that's got a good line, which ironically, as much as I hate to say it, it might be better off in Minnesota.
He would be better off Minnesota, but if he goes to the Steelers, he goes to the Giants. It's over, man. He's dead.
Well, it's not quite as bad with the Steelers as it is with the Giants.
Giants. Oh no, our offensive line is a dumpster fire inside of a train fire inside of it's just that bad. So.
Ours wasn't great, but to your point, I mean, it's if he could just stay back there and he had some good weapons to shoot to.
If he had a guy like Saquon Barkley that he could hand the ball, oh, that's right, we got rid of him. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad. Yeah, that was a genius move. Yeah, love that.
Yeah, and he's great out of the backfield too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just had to bring that up as I was thinking.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. So let's talk about business coaching.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So we had you referenced earlier right before the show that I'd written a handful of articles recently, both for and why a business coach may not be ideal. I specifically addressed in an article I did on LinkedIn, newsletter article I did on LinkedIn with the Biz Coach Eds. And we talked specifically, or I specifically addressed the idea that, between their coaches, consultants, fractional executives, right? All these professionals that work with business owners, honestly, most of them are really good. However, there are some out there that a little lacking. And honestly, that's not even as bad where the issue really comes into play is when you have somebody who's good at what they do, but they try and go outside their scope or their purview to try and maintain the relationship with the client, or maybe even get a client that they don't have because they need a client, which is part of the challenge. So they try and coach in an area or a category of business that they're not as familiar with. And that's where it really begins to open the door. Now, there are some others out there altogether that are just nothing but sales artists pushing out a high-ticket coaching program, which unfortunately, that exists too, and will always exist. But the truth of the matter is, the vast majority of the coaches out there are actually have the best intentions, and where we falter is when we try and do more than what we're capable of doing, or where we try to go into areas that we're not as familiar with. I fell prey to it in my early days, and I made up for it, but by putting more time and energy in. But when you look at it as a business, being a business coach, the return on investment's not so ideal because so much time into learning a topic or a category of business that you're not as familiar with, and you're not really getting the return on investment in that regard. But yeah, for the client, and I'm certain that in the time that I've been coaching, there's probably I don't have anything less than a 5-star review, but I'm sure there's a few clients probably not as happy with the end result. And I think that's important for us to address, which is part of why I wanted to kind of talk about that today. So let's start with the challenges, right? As I've already kind of gone down that path. One of the challenges we referenced is coaches kind of going into a space they're not as familiar. I think the problem is, and this is on the coach, is that not necessarily setting the right expectations with the client.
Right.
Right. That is a recipe for failure. And I remember my very first client. It was a prove it deal. Like, I took some money up front, but the majority of what I was supposed to make was going to be based on the increase in revenue.
I remember that, what you told me.
Right. Yeah. And so, in the end, it worked out fine and the results were good. Unfortunately, COVID kicked in and it kind of changed that whole dynamic. But what's interesting about that is when you do something in that regard, the client feels like you have a vested interest in their success. And consequently, they're like, okay, well, I'm only going to have to pay X number of dollars, whatever that is, if they perform and they give me the results that I need for my business. Which at the same time, the trade-off is, at the end of the day, as the coach or consultant or fractional, whatever role you're playing, if the success that you're being graded on is directly determined by the client's engagement level and or ability to execute, that creates its own inherent problems to begin with, right? And that was the lesson I learned the hard way. I literally had to come in and say, no, it's got to be my way. Literally, I took the phrase from The Prophet, that TV show, The Prophet. Yeah. Right? It's my way. It's got to be my way, because if it's not, I can't be held accountable to the results if I can't come in and make the impact that I feel I need to make to be able to get the result I'm proposing I can get for you. And that's not an easy scenario too. Most of business owners are pretty, familiar. They're very comfortable with what they feel like they can do, and more importantly, there's a bit of a, for lack of a better term, there's a bit of ego that that they don't want to relinquish responsibility, delegate, whatever you want to call it. And so that becomes a problem, so everything's filtering through, a funnel that's really too small to kind of filter through. And so things have got to get done faster, or got to get done differently than they've been done in the past. And that's where most business owners that are not seeing the results that they want, that's the challenge they have.
Right. I mean, that's the whole reason why I'm getting a business coach, because I mean, just using myself as an example, being that you're my coach. I mean, it's like, I understand, I understood, I'm going into a new area here, so I need to get some new perspective. And obviously, I needed to get some, like I said, outside, because like I said, I'm used to doing things a certain way. And in this particular, especially a new field, I was like, okay, hey, this is my way is not going to necessarily cut it. I got to see what's broken, and I can't tell what's broken. You know what I mean? Because I'm too close to it. So you pointed out a few things. Hey, we need to tweak this. We could do that. And it's made a huge difference already. You know what I mean? So I certainly appreciate it for sure. And I think that's the thing that people have to, this is why you hire a coach, because your way might be you gotten you so far, but now you're plateauing or it's not working at all. Where if your way was so great, you'd be, V-shaping this thing up. I mean, so
right.
Hockey stick growth here, but apparently it's not. So, listen to the coach. Run the play I just called.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a valid point too. And you use the football analogy there, but the truth of the matter is that's actually part of it too. What got you here? This is a phrase I got it from a book. I believe the book was Malcolm Gladwell. What got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
And I read that, and I was in a transitional phase in my career, and I had gotten promoted, and I got to the point where I was kind of like tapped out, and I wasn't getting where I wanted to go next. And I came across this book. I saw the title, and I'm like, And so I read like the inner cover of it, and I'm like, oh, I got to read this book. So not only did I read it, but then I did the audiobook at the same time. In that particular point in my career, I was doing a lot of road time. And so I listened to that book probably 3 times while I read it, just to really indoctrinate some of the concepts. And I mean, it literally it says it in the title. What got you here won't get you there. What got you from your first 100,000 to, your next to 250,000 or 250 to 500,000. Each threshold of growth in your business hits another wall. It creates there's another circumstance that needs to be, and multiple, not even just one. It's usually multiple. I mean, for instance, 0 to 100,000, your primary focus is just literally increasing sales, finding leads and closing deals, and then fulfilling on those deals. Mm-hmm. That's the vast majority of what you do. If you remember to ask for a review, awesome. If you got to calculate the books, but as long as there's money in the bank account, that's a big step in the right direction. I mean, those other secondary things, which are also equally important, aren't as important in the first year. Let's say for the to go from 0 to 100K. You get past 100K, and maybe it's not exactly 100. Maybe it's 80. Maybe it's 90. Maybe it's 120. But you get past that point. And that threshold, now it's like, now I got to pay attention to what I'm doing with that money. I got to pay attention to how I'm spending it, what I'm spending it on. I need to make sure that if I'm carving out an income for myself, that I'm also putting money back into the business. I can't take every penny out to pay the mortgage or whatever. I got to make sure that something for the business to add new services, add new solutions, whatever the case may be. You get some people. One of the first, I think it's one of the first hires I would highly recommend any small business owner, depending on what you do, but you're in the service space, it's get an admin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether that's a virtual admin or a live in-person admin, whatever it is, get an admin, because what makes you good at your business is, generally speaking, what is going to trip you up, that's going to keep you from growing the business. Right? If you're good at sales, it's going to be the operations that trips you up. If you're good at operations, you don't have the sales in place, right? And so it could, which could be offset by marketing, right? Good marketing can offset for sales. Sales struggles a little bit more to offset good marketing, unless but it's how do I get in front of the right people? But anyway, the point is what makes you good in one area is going to make you struggle in another area. And consequently, if you don't find a way to fill that void, you're going to have those problems. And that is coming full circle, the point that I just mentioned, which was setting the right expectations for a client. A good salesperson offering a service of some sort, that's a mistake they're going to make. They're going to overpromise and underdeliver, because I just want to do right by the customer. I want to do this, and they want to get the sale, their permission for the sale, and then we do a half rear-ended job, and my tiles around my pool aren't cut correctly. Because they closed the deal, they wanted the $15,000 sale, but at the end, when it was all said and done, the guy that came and did the work, the contractor that did the work, well, his saw broke the day that they were supposed to finish the job. Oh, wow. And it's like, and I walk around it, and there's about a 10-foot section of pavers that we did around the backside of the pool that I look at, and I'm like, this looks awesome. This looks like dog dude. It was obvious that something happened that caused that production. And so I reach out to the owner. I'm like, hey, great, you got the deal, right? I was excited about all the other stuff except this. We dropped the ball on this, and he didn't want to own it at first, right? Wow. So anyway, but my point is that if you overpromise, underdeliver, you're going to set yourself up for failure. Right. If you and as a coach, I'll openly admit, one of the mistakes I made early on was I get somebody signed up, I get them going with our agreement, I'm providing the coaching, and I realized that they needed something and they didn't have the skill set within their organization. So I'd say, you know what, I'll help you with that, or I'll even do that for you, which is a major no. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. And then you take on that responsibility, and then they're not happy when it's either not done the way that they thought it was going to be, or it took longer because you didn't have the bandwidth to do it. And then consequently you're like, ugh. Then you're backpedaling and apologizing, and you're justifying, but that's not your skill set. That's not what you should have been doing. Mm-hmm. Right. That's their part to own. So, setting poor expectations is always going to be a downside. And so kind of going back to that point, as a business coach, if you set poor expectations, or you try and do more than what it is you're actually supposed to do as a coach or a consultant, then you're setting yourself up for failure. You're going to create a lot of problems. And ultimately, it makes it very difficult for you to. And that's where that challenge or question about using a business coach, is like, well, why would I do it if I'm going to have a bad experience? And there's enough bad experiences out there that people can look at and hang their hat on and say, this is why I wouldn't use a business coach. Yeah. But what I appreciate too, like one of our first meetings, we covered those 6 core competencies, and you made me see those things. Like I said, I never, like I said, I've been a business finance guy for a long time, but it's like to see it
actually like to see the playbook. Okay. It's like, okay. And recognize, okay, well, here's where we are. Like say, here's what I am good at. Okay,
Right.
I do need to get these, but hey, first year in business, let's just focus on these two, focus on these three. We will get there. But at least I know it's on my radar. I know, okay, there's going to be a certain point where I got to start transitioning that over. Okay, I got to start getting into the and I got to start delegating. So covering those 6 core competencies in one of our first meetings, I think set a good expectation where it's like, okay, at least I because like I said, you don't know what you don't know, but when you see it like that, okay, this is coming right now. We're going to do this, but just know we're going to transition.
Right. Yeah. Great point. And I think that the last thing I'll say about bad experiences for clients with coaches is when a coach, not only do we set ourselves up for failure when we overpromise and underdeliver, but we also set ourselves up for failure when we take on clients that probably shouldn't take on. And I don't mean it from a skill set perspective. I mean it from they're not going to listen anyway. And, it's like some people will pay for having a coach just to say, I have a business coach, and then not do a damn thing that the coach says to do. Right. So
that's a poor reflection on the coach.
Well, and that's exactly that's what I learned as a coach is I'm like, oh, well, that's not a great relationship because that's actually going to come back and look bad on me. They're going to eventually go out there and complain about me or tell somebody that I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And the reality was, they didn't do anything I told them to do. So literally go back to your point. You play the play I just called.
Right.
Run the play I just called.
Well, even the college recruiters, when they go to the schools and they're recruiting the kids, the first question they ask, they don't ask about 40 times. They don't ask about benches, squat. They ask, is he coachable? Yeah. That's the first question they'll ask because they can get you faster. They can get you stronger. That's not the issue. Is he coachable? Is he going to listen to what I tell him to do to get there? And does he have the work ethic to do it? That's what they want to know, right? So you can, and like I said, obviously this is probably how I'm going to do my coaching. When I start coaching clients, I'm going to say I am, and I'm okay. That's okay. There's so many times in business I've had managers say, "Why did you turn that customer down? It just wasn't the right fit. It wasn't. Right. It wasn't the right fit." They're going to bitch about a quarter point every 6 months. I'm like, I don't have time for that headache. Okay, right. And I'll cut somebody. Everybody, oh man, I would love to have that client. Go get him. Go ahead. Let him be your pain in the ass. It ain't gonna be mine. I'm okay with saying no. I'm good.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that was, like I said, I think, and again, I can speak to these points because they're all learning lessons I've muscled through. The first year and a half, 2 years, it was, it's like, wow, I need to bring money in, right? This is my business. This is what I need to do. I need to bring money in. I'm a salesperson. And I go out and have a conversation. I get somebody, and then I realize, man, they are not going to do anything I need to. I'm going to suggest that they do.
That's tough.
That I tell them to do. And so all I can do is suggest. And so you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You take the money, and then you realize, this is not going to go well. And what you don't have is the vision to realize that failure, right, to be able to get them to execute. That's going to reflect on you regardless, because they're going to tell people that you were the problem. Nobody's going to own that, especially somebody like that. They're not going to own the fact that they
definitely not going to own it.
Right. So, and I think that those, I'm sure there's others, but those are the 3 primary things. They really, when there's a bad experience, it's often one of those things. And again, all of those are quite honestly coach issues. Those aren't client issues. The coach has to identify that. And when they do, and they recognize that this is going to be a gap, this is going to be a challenge, that's where they need to, kind of pull themselves out of that. So now to kind of flip the switch and let's go the other direction, let's go all the good reasons why you should be working with a coach, right? One of the first things you referenced the 6 core competencies. The number one thing in the 6 core competencies is to identify what is your vision. What is your vision? Can you effectively set goals? Can you clearly set goals and get people to follow you? And, when people have challenged me on that and they said, well, I don't have any employees. How important? Why? That's not really. If you don't have a clear goal, you don't know what you're doing every day. If you don't have a clear goal on what I need to accomplish, what's driving the business to go forward, you don't know what you should be doing every day, right? Who's my ideal target audience, right? There's a reason that we have that. What's my unique selling proposition or my market dominating position, right? right? There's a reason for that, because when you're clear on all those things, you know what you should be focused on, right? And the more clear you are and the more defined that vision is, the easier it is for you to explain what you do and who you serve and how you do it, right? And those are the three primary things that you have to answer for anybody that's interested in your services. This is who I help. This is who I am. This is who I help. And this is how I help them, right? And when you're clear on that, it gives you a lot of perspective for you to kind of dial back and say, okay, this is where I need to be spending my time. This is how I should focus on my energy. That's why I said when we talk about the 6 core competencies, year 1, the only thing you're focused on is lead generation and selling deals, and then fulfilling on those deals in a way that the client's satisfied. When you do that effectively, you'll be able to build off of that and leverage that. So that's first and foremost. And so when you have people, then the vision becomes even more important. So you have to have a clear vision to begin with. Once you have the vision, you can move forward, stumble your way through that. And then as you start, and it doesn't even have to be employees. Like I said, your first employee should be an assistant. If it's a VA, that's still an employee, right?
Yeah.
Technically, your vendors that you partner with, they're not employees, but they're part of the organization.
Your clients have to know what your vision is. Your clients have to see it.
Great point. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so everybody that you're engaging with that plays a role in how you deliver your solution to your client, that they need to be familiar with what your vision is. If they're not, and they can't really orchestrate it for you. I mean, think about this from a networking perspective. How can you refer business to me, Chris, if you're not clear on what my vision is?
Correct.
Right. And you're going to refer people to me that aren't ideal clients because you don't really completely understand what I do for a client. So you're going to refer, I got this guy who's, he's got a car, auto detail, and, but he's losing his butt, and he's actually probably going to go out of business. I think he'd be a great client for you. And I'm like, I'd love to help him, Chris, but the reality is, if he can't pay me, I don't know if I want him as a client.
Yeah, I did not make that referral, just for the record. Hold on a second.
But yeah, that's a perfect example of because I wanted to help companies that want to grow and scale. Right now, if I had the extra time and I can help somebody, and I've said this before, I'll say it online here. I've probably given away more coaching than I've charged for. Over the years, because I've been, consistently trying to prove to clients, what our capabilities are, and we're expanding, we're growing, we're adding new services, and I'm like, you know what? Let's try this out. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go. Let's try this out, right? And that was, like I said before, a mistake that I made. But in the grand scheme of things, when you think about it from that perspective, I also was learning in that process.
Yep.
So, but okay, so strategic vision and clarity is key. If not not just for yourself, but for anybody else that you're engaging with. A second one is objective insights and accountability. You mentioned objectivity, right? You mentioned that when you were talking about your business with the podcast. And one of the biggest challenges for any business owner is to be objective about their business. And the main reason why is it's theirs, right? You are emotionally attached to this thing that you created. It is your baby. And first of all, you're going to get really mad if I tell you your baby's ugly, right? And second of all, if I do tell you it's ugly and you admit that it is ugly, then you got to own that it's ugly, and then we got to figure out how to fix it, right? And so the hard part with the objectivity is being willing to step back and look at your business and say, this is not ideal. It's not doing the things I want it to do. I'm dropping the ball here. I need some guidance. How can I do this better? What are some suggestions you have? You have to be objective. You have to be able to step back and look at it. And if you can't do it, that's where the coach can really help you in. Yep. Most people are not. I would say, honestly, I would probably suggest 90% of people cannot objectively look at their own creations and be honest with themselves. Either they're too critical or they're not critical enough, right? Because some people will look at their business. I have multiple conversations. Probably I've even had conversations with you at times where you're being even overly critical of your situation because you want it faster, whatever. And I'm like, okay, no, you're on a good path. This is a good, it's not going to be overnight. You're going to go from $0 to $1 million. right? So but it's not coming as fast as you like. And so I can see where you get frustrated. But that's a common conversation with most business owners, is either they're overly critical or not critical enough. And you need somebody who's objective, somebody who's seen these scenarios play out. And then I can give you some perspective to draw from.
Yeah, no, you definitely helped me in that area. And to touch again on the vision thing a little bit, you helped me refocus, some of my vision, especially when I started the marketing arm. And you touched on it. I think you hit it, but you didn't even, it was almost unintentional. You were like, you people comfortable on camera. And when you said that, I went into the whole easy, comfortable, and cost effective. And that changed. That was my market dominating position. That all tied in to those 6 core competencies and things like that. And the funny part was you did that damn near unintentionally. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if you knew exactly how that was going to turn it. And it was like, that makes a lot of, so let's go with that. I mean,
well, yeah, and I'll say this too, Chris, you've done just this year alone, you've done almost 20 shows, right? So, and I don't remember total, but you're probably pushing 60, 70 shows maybe since you started.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
So whatever period, since spring of last year, the number of shows that you've done, here's what I was going to say about that. Some people, we've had this conversation about market dominating positions. Some people are like, oh, I've got to have this. I'm like, it comes to you organically over time. It doesn't day one, you don't come up with a market dominating position. It just kind of evolves. And what you have to understand is that you need enough reps under your belt to identify, oh, this is actually who I'm serving. Oh, this is exactly what I'm good at, right? I want to do a podcast. Great. Okay, you're doing a podcast. You're doing these interviews. You know what we identified, Chris? And I honestly I couldn't have told you that last summer because I hadn't seen you do it enough times. But after you became my producer and you get on the show and I'm having you have conversations and I see other people, I hear other people, wow, you just made it so easy, Chris. I'm like, there you go, Chris.
Yeah.
So,
no, yeah. And that was the thing too. Like I said, it was kind of funny because you were the one that said, hey, you need to start a marketing arm, because the podcast was, educate, elevate, and inspire, which was, but you were the one, like, you saw the vision before I saw it. You were like, hey, we need to spin this off. We need to do, and that's what I've been focusing on this year. And then when you came up with that, it was like, boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that, like, again, I think that's what working with you, not to, toot your own horn here or whatever, but it's like working with you. Like I said, I know you changed my vision on a couple of things. Like, I'm like, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. And you put it in a way that would make sense to me, where I know that you have the ability to pivot. And if somebody's more analytical, you'll say, okay, here's, I got to put the data behind it, and you'll do it that way. And I don't know if a lot of coaches out there can pivot the way you can pivot from the operational side to the sales side. I don't know if they have that person. I don't, because you said they might be so sales focused, they're not operations people, but they get outside their lane, like you were saying. So,
right. Yeah. And that's a valid point. I don't think, I would say this in regards to that specifically. I would say, you can be good as long as you can be objective. You can be really good if you can be objective, but you have to be able to not get emotionally attached to some of these scenarios. And I'm not talking about specifically your business. I'm talking about the coaching I'm providing. Mm-hmm. If I hang my hat on, I'm a sales coach and I just do sales coaching. Well, I did sales for 30 plus years. I've done sales coaching for 25 of those 30 plus years. And I can say that as good as I was as a salesperson, because I was pretty damn good, I was not the best. Not by a stretch. I mean, there was a lot of guys that were and women that were better than I was. And more importantly, I learned from them, right? I was not so attached to who I am, what I do, that I couldn't learn from somebody else. And when I saw people who had, like little tips and tricks that I could pick up, I'm like, oh, I'm stealing that and making that my own, right? And consequently, what happened over time is I came up with this tool belt that I would then share with other people and say, hey, look, I can show you how to be a good salesperson. You might not be great, but I can show you how to be really damn good. And if you follow these steps step by step. And so the reason I got promoted in sales management was because I could show 10 other people how to sell the way I sold.
Yep.
Right. So I say that to say you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be, and where you get too caught up in this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do, you lose sight of the opportunity to provide guidance and insight in these other categories we could be. And that's, again, I don't think you can't be well balanced, but in my particular experience, I literally joked about this on a call earlier today. The fact that I was a jack of all trades actually works to my advantage as a business coach because I did a little bit of everything. True. Right. So, and I think that that's some perspective too. It's easier to draw when you have that. So let's go to the third bullet point is financial acumen. You and I have had multiple conversations about finance, about a banking industry and how that relates, and how many business owners we engage with that don't understand some basic principles in the finance space. Some were not even familiar with a P&L or how to read a P&L, which it's not. It's not brain science. It doesn't take a whole lot to understand it. It does take patience. And I think most times, again, kind of going back full circle, a lot of business owners are so caught up in what they're doing. I don't have time to learn something else, right? Which is also the same problem we have with as it relates to technology. I don't have time to learn something else. Just tell me what I need to know. And the problem with finance is I can tell you what you need to know. You need a CFO. You want somebody to tell you what you need to know about your finances. I can tell you what you need to know. But if you're making decisions based on the information I gave you, the truth of the matter is at the end of the day is if I give you faulty information, you're going to make faulty decisions. And the business owner, you're relying on somebody else. You're making important decisions based on for your business based on somebody else's perspective. Guidance, they can provide guidance, but they can't tell you what to do. Right. So that's the thing I say about financial acumen. You've got to invest the time to at least understand some core principles, because then you'll make better decisions. And I'm not talking about P&Ls. I'm talking about KPIs. Oh yeah. But on top of that, like I said, if you don't know enough about your own books, that's where embezzlement comes in. That's where somebody's going to rob your ass blind. You're like, oh, I trust my bookkeeper. I trust my accountant. I trust my, and it's like, and then they're like, why am I broke? Because they took all your money because you weren't paying attention. and how many times have we heard those stories about, financial advisors working with athletes or whatever. And they're like, oh, no, I don't need to know about all that. I'm like, and for every bad story, I'm sure there's a good story out there that's, did right by them and raise their right. But I mean, there's my favorite phrase from Ronald Reagan: trust but verify. Right. Definitely. I trust you to make the best decisions, to help me make good decisions. I trust you to help me make good decisions, but I'm still going to verify. I'm going to still do my due diligence. And there's a reason we call it checks and balances as it relates to finances. Right. Absolutely. But even if you're a construction guy, you want profitability at the end of the year, but you got to know each job's profitability, what your profit margin is in each particular job, and when that's going to pay for to adjust your cash flow for the next particular job, things like that. So, but again, if you're not aware of that up front, what I'm saying, you could be running short because you got to go do the next job, and it's like, hey, if this is running 90 days. You didn't get the to carry over. It's like, so you got, and do you have a line of credit set up to get that until the, ARs kick in and things like, but again, if you're not on top of that kind of thing, this is where we're going to have problems. Yep, exactly. So understanding not just your finance, your P&L, but more specifically how money flows through your business, right? Which is like you referenced credit, which is a big thing, right? Understanding that. And again, you can take guidance from somebody. Just make sure you understand what, when you're making a decision, what you're using to make that decision. The next one is systemization and process efficiency, right? I mean, it's like if there was, you mentioned contractors, there's landscapers, there's plumbers that are coordinating, jobs. I've seen people look at a map and not know how to plot out a good routine for how they drive, right? Now, I had an ice cream distribution business. I had it locked into my head. You don't make left-hand turns ever when you're driving a truck. Oh, wow. Yeah. When you're driving a truck, you never make, because you're crossing against traffic and trying to make a left-hand turn in an oversized vehicle. Not an easy thing to do, right? No. Especially in a big city, right? So you always make right-hand turns and you set up your route to always make. My dad taught me that when I was probably a teenager, quite honestly. Just hearing him through osmosis, I heard him, having these conversations because he was in that space, and that stayed with me. And I'm constantly amazed. There are people that are in the transportation industry that don't understand that concept.
I never would have thought about it. I've never been in the transportation industry, but it makes sense though when you say it. I'm like, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah. But to your point, the practicality doesn't relate unless you actually have the perspective to draw on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, was it a little bit? Know a little bit about everything. But that's an example of process efficiency. Systemization, doing the same thing over and over and over. Like if you have certain tasks, this is great in the marketing space. If you're actually graphic artist or something like that, when you're doing something, you should do as much of it at the same time. Like you and I do a lot of oddball projects where we're doing this and then we're flipping to this software and then we're flipping to this software. We're trying to post things and whatever. What should be doing is building your content, whether you do all your writing first, then do all your graphic art stuff first, then take those components, put them together into another resource or a tool, whatever, and then do all your posting last, right? And what we have a tendency to do is we do this, then this, and this, and this, and we do it in order. But what we should be doing is batching those activities to get the most efficiency, right? So you're not going back and forth all the time. Simple things that, logically we understand and make sense when somebody points it out to us. The problem is while you're in the moment, right? It's like, I got to get this done. You're not thinking about the other stuff. And that's when you create these inefficiencies that then become draws on the business, right? It's actually costing you more time than you anticipated. And heaven forbid you actually hire somebody and then train them to do what you want them to do in an inefficient manner, and they don't have the perspective, right? That's how you take a business that's making a simple mistake and you expound on it by however many employees you have. Perfect example. You got a landscaping company and you go out you drive 30 minutes in traffic. It's whatever hour in the morning in rush hour traffic in a big city. And there you got 3 people in a truck driving out to the job site, and the job site's 30 minutes away. And I say job site, I'm talking about landscaping. So you drive to another part of town. In the time that they're in that car at $17 an hour times 3 people for 30 minutes. Oh, by the way, gas is $3.50 a gallon. Add that in there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you're going to do it again at the end of the day when they drive back from that part of town. Right. And it's like, okay, well, I'm starting in the hole 60, 80, $100 on the day.
Right.
Right. It takes it might even be more than that, but you think about that from that perspective. Right. And so the truth of the matter is that I just gave away $100 just because I was inefficient with how I'm managing my time, my employees' time.
Wow.
Right? And then again, now you promote one of them to be the supervisor. They create another route, another team of people. They're out doing it, and they do it the same way because they don't know. Nobody taught them and said, "Hey, don't make left-hand turns. Hey, don't." It's like, right, all these different, and then combine 2 or 3 of those concepts, and all of a sudden you're not batching your activities. You're not training people correctly. You're doing these other inefficient activities, and next thing you know, you got 10, 12, 15 different inefficiencies in a business that is already on a lean margin for profitability. It could be that much better if you just implement it. And this is where scale, it's called economies of scale, really comes into play. The next one is leadership. I could drone on this for literally hours. And the biggest problem with leadership as it relates to a business owner, at least in the spaces that we operate in for the most part, right? The service-based industries, right? I know you got some clients in the restaurant space, and you got some of these other clients that are in these other spaces, the service-based businesses. One of the challenges is that most people who start a business to begin with, when they start a business, they often didn't work for corporate America for some period of time. Not that you had to, but one of the benefits that I gained from working for somewhere else for somebody else is they invested in how to develop my skills. My critical thinking skills, my emotional intelligence, my ability to lead people. And there's a lot to be said on that because there's a lot of business owners, unfortunately, have the old school mentality. I'm paying you. It's your job. Just do what I tell you to do. The truth of the matter is That didn't work in the baby boomer era. If it did, it barely worked. It certainly didn't work with the Gen X's, because that's me, and my skin just, or my hair on my back just stands up when I hear that. And it didn't get any better with all the different generations after that. It better got progressively worse, because millennials and Gen Zs are the first to bristle at that.
Exactly.
So the truth of the matter is that doesn't work. It never really has worked. Getting people to understand the role that they play in an organization, how important it is, and most importantly, what they can do with that, right? And what their contribution to the company means. When you take the time to do that, you really create an opportunity for somebody to play, to feel vested in the business. Like, sure, I play an integral role in this organization. And if you have a conversation with like an assistant who reports directly to the owner, and they're super proud if they're good at what they do, even if they're not good at what they do, sometimes they're too proud. But the point is that if I had a young lady, she was the receptionist / admin assistant, whatever you want to call her, to the owner, and she made sure that no salespeople ever got a hold of the owner.
Right.
And she was dogged about it. Like, she just did not let people. So he got a lot of his time back, because he wasn't getting inundated with calls that were not relevant, not important, didn't need to be taken, got sold on things he really didn't need, whatever. And so she was just really good about that. She'd shut him down. Here's the problem to that, and hard to identify, but that's a skill set that needed to be developed in that particular individual, so that the owner in their particular case could actually run the business more efficiently. But as that relates, and this is team growth more specifically than leadership, but that's a component of leadership. He gave her the authority and allowed her to play the role that she needed to play to make him better at his job. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah. It'd be like in the loan space for you guys, right? You're the loan originator, and then you got the what's the back end that makes the determinations on the
underwriters,
right? And then some places they have the processors that work in between the originator and the
correct.
And so that processor plays a really important role, right? They help identify the things that the underwriters are going to approve or deny, and then they pass that along to the originator, and the smart originator identifies, oh, well, that helps me better determine whether or not this is going to be a good client or not.
Correct.
Right. And so the originator could be more efficient at what they do, meaning they're talking to more of the right qualified.
Get better packages. Yep.
And they're going to get the likelihood of them getting pushed through are going to improve, which only enhances their success ratio, the number of people that are closed, which then enhances their relationship with the people out there, because people are like, oh yeah, go to Chris. He'll make sure you get you'll make sure you get approved. And it's because of the team that you're working with. That's a sign of leadership. That's an effective leadership position. Even though it's not your direct responsibility, understanding what the processor is going to ask you for and making sure that the processor you're working with has the insight and the understanding to get from the underwriter what the specifics are, right? And maintaining that relationship, that's a sign of leadership. Right. Yep. A lot of people don't really understand that. But so I illustrate that point that goes into every aspect of our businesses. And so the truth of the matter is, whether it's how to do this task, how to do that task, this is the role you play. This is why it's so important. Identifying those things is just scraping the tip of the iceberg as it relates to leadership.
Oh yeah.
Beyond the whole, hey, there's leadership, and then there's what I would call executive level leadership, and that's when you're teaching somebody else to be a leader, right? That's a whole next evolution that most people are not prepared for. We teach leadership. I taught it for years with my sales organization in the wireless space. I would teach people, okay, first of all, understand when somebody says this, you need to understand that it sounds like an emotional response, but the truth of the matter is, it is, but there's an underlying reason for why they said what they said. Mm-hmm. It's your job as a leader, understand why they said what they said. Right.
Figure out the why. Yep.
Yes. And when you understand the why, then you'll understand the motivation. When you understand the motivation, you can help redirect that and help clear the air. Like if somebody said to me, okay, I had a store manager reach out to me and say, oh, my employee was late for the 7th time now. I'm going to fire her. Well, first of all, we got to have 3 write-ups. If you've done 3 write-ups, that's a problem in and of itself, right?
Right.
If it was that bad, why have we not written them up? Well, she's been late 7 times. How do we not fire her? These 3 times. Well, you didn't demonstrate that, right? So as a leader, it's your responsibility to communicate that. You chose not to communicate that. So now's the first time you're communicating it.
Yeah.
So all we can do is give them the warning. Okay. But here's the important part. Have you ever asked why she's continually late?
Exactly. That was my first question I was going to ask.
Yeah, there you go. Well, why are we? So it's as simple as, hey, I noticed you've been late a handful of times, Chris. Can you share with me what was the reason? And so ironically, I got them to take action. I got them to ask the question. So we sat down with a warning notice and said, we'll use her name, Bree. Bree, you were late. Again, this has been as many. I can remember as many as 7 times.
It's habitual.
And it's been more than 5 minutes, which is kind of like the line in the sand that we drew. It's been more than 5 minutes on 7 different occasions over the last 2 months. Is there a particular reason why you keep showing up late? And she's like, yeah, before you took over as manager 3 months ago, the previous manager knew that I had a hard time with opening shifts because my daughter, I have to drop her off at school and I have to go and it takes the blah, 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 blah. And I just can't get here for the opening shift. And so they usually would have me come in at 10 o'clock.
There you go.
But when you took over the store, you started making the new schedule. Nobody had bothered to ask me. And I didn't want to, you're the new manager. I didn't want to create any waves. So I was just trying to do the best I could. So good news was that the manager of the store was like, well, that's, I appreciate you giving me that feedback. If I were to move you to the 10 o'clock shift and have you go 10 to 7, would it make it easier for you to get on the time? She goes, I can almost guarantee I'll never be late. And immediately we solved the problem. Boom. The difference was we just didn't ask the question.
And you kept a good employee.
Yeah, and you kept a good employee. Exactly. Yeah, because she was, for the most part, a relatively good employee, right? It's simple as, and as hard as it is to find good people in the retail space, that's even more important.
Right. Exactly. And the other thing, when you talk about leadership, things like that, one thing leadership has to understand is turnover is expensive. You know what I mean? Trying to hire somebody and train them. And it's like, if you can minimize your turnover, it's going to definitely affect your P&L and your balance sheet that we talked about earlier. And the other thing, I just, whenever I hear this kind of a situation come up, I always think of that Richard Branson. Richard Branson's like, hey, the customer is important. It's the employees, because good customer service is a byproduct. You treat the employees right, the good customer service is just going to be a byproduct of that.
That's a great point. And that is a great phrase that Richard uses in identifying it. The customer's always right, but it's the client, the employee is the one that's providing the customer experience, right?
Right.
And so at the end of the day, if we're taking care of the clients will take care of the customer, and it will, everything kind of works itself out. So that's the 5. I know that we're going along on the show today. So here's what I'm going to suggest. We'll pick up the other 5 in our next show next week.
Sure.
And go from there. But it's kind of cool to walk through this in this way. I think there's a lot of things here. We're barely touching on some of these components and how they impact a business.
We could do a show on each one of these components by itself.
Oh, we absolutely could. Maybe that's a bunch of shorts we'll put together. But that's a great point in just identifying. I've got 10 things listed on the recent article I did on LinkedIn today, and I encourage people to take a look at that. But when you see all the different reasons that a good coach, not even a great one, just a good coach, can bring to the table for a small business owner, and the impact that they can have in identifying some of these things, it's kind of a game changer in the grand scheme of things, in the impact that it can have in their business. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you're really good at what you do. Don't try and be all things to all people, because when you do, that's when you fall short, right? That's when things, we've all heard that analogy. The more that you try and make everybody happy, the less that anybody's ever happy.
Right.
So, but yeah. So anyway, I appreciate that. It's been a good show today. I think there's a lot that we can go on with this, but it's important to people that are considering coaches. Yes, there are problem coaches out there. There are people that have a different perspective, but the truth of the matter is a lot of really good coaches out there. Occasionally we make mistakes, and occasionally we overpromise, underdeliver, whatever. But it's usually because we're trying to do the right things by somebody. But in the grand scheme of things, yeah, absolutely. And in the grand scheme of things, if you knew these 10 things and the impact that we could have in helping you with your business, you'd realize I definitely need to be working with somebody.
Absolutely. Well, again, yeah, thanks for putting that out there. I know, like I said, I appreciate, working with you, things like that. And, that article that you put out today, yeah, it just gives, great perspective. But like I said, let's keep, going over these kind of concepts. I think they really are important. Like I said, I think we can do a show on each and every one of them, personally. So, but I think the more business owners, realize these things, the more they kind of put it in their, in front of them, it'll start to resonate with them. So,
yeah, appreciate that.
All right, man. Have a great rest of your night, man. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy.